The old pickup truck rumbled along the highway, each mile bringing Aaron closer to a place he hadn't seen in 10 years. His hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, as the familiar "Welcome to Oakhaven" sign appeared. A sigh escaped his lips, a mix of relief and a heavy weight settling in his chest. He hadn't meant to stay away so long, but life had a way of pulling you in different directions. Now, here he was, back where it all began, and he wasn't sure if he was ready for it. The town hadn't changed much, at least from the edges. The same tall, green trees lined the road, their leaves rustling a quiet welcome. He passed the old clock tower, its hands still stuck at 10 past 2, just as they had been when he was a boy. A small smile touched his lips, remembering how he and Matt used to make up stories about why the clock stopped, always involving a daring rescue or a secret treasure. His eyes scanned the familiar landscape, picking out landmarks from his past. There was the dusty baseball field where he'd spent countless summer afternoons, the faint scent of cut grass almost reaching him through the closed windows. Then came the town park with its bright red swings and the old, wooden fort they'd built themselves. He pictured Matt, all gangly limbs and a wide grin, pushing him higher and higher on those swings until Aaron thought he could touch the sky. A pang of something sharp, like a half-forgotten song, hit him. It wasn't just the physical places that brought back memories. It was the people tied to them, especially Matt. He wondered if Matt still owned the Daily Grind, the cozy little coffee shop that smelled of roasted beans and warm sugar. Aaron's stomach fluttered. He knew he couldn't avoid seeing Matt. He just hoped he was ready for whatever feelings that meeting might stir up. The truck slowed as he turned on a main street, the heart of Oakhaven, and his own heart began to beat a little faster. Aaron parked his truck and stared at the familiar storefront. The Daily Grind still had its cozy red awning, though the paint was a bit faded now. The scent of coffee, warm and welcoming, drifted out to greet him, pulling him forward. Taking a deep breath, he pushed open the glass door, a little bell jingling above his head. Inside, time seemed to have paused. The same mismatched wooden tables and chairs filled the space. The same local art hung on the walls, and the same comfortable hum of quiet conversation filled the air. And then he saw him. Matt. Matt was behind the counter, just as Aaron remembered, wiping down the espresso machine with a practiced hand. He hadn't changed much either, maybe a few more lines around his kind eyes, but his smile was still as warm as the coffee he served. Matt looked up, and his eyes widened just a little. A slow, easy grin spread across his face. "Aaron, is that really you?" Matt's voice was softer than Aaron remembered, a little huskier. Aaron felt a lump in his throat. "Hey, Matt. Long time, huh?" Matt laughed, a sound that brought back a rush of happy memories. "A long time indeed. What brings you back to Oakhaven?" He walked around the counter, wiping his hands on his apron, and pulled Aaron into a friendly hug. It was quick, but Aaron felt a strange comfort in it, a warmth he hadn't realized he'd missed. "Just visiting," Aaron mumbled, feeling a little awkward. "Thought I'd stop by." "Well, I'm glad you did. Can I get you anything?" "The usual?" Matt asked, his eyes sparkling with a question Aaron couldn't quite read. "A black coffee would be great, thanks," Aaron replied, remembering his old order. They talked about simple things while Matt made the coffee. The weather, how quiet the town had become, small updates about people Aaron vaguely remembered. But underneath the easy words, Aaron felt a silent hum, a quiet space between them where unspoken questions and old feelings waited. It was like a soft song playing in the background, noticed but not yet sung aloud. Aaron could feel Matt's gaze on him sometimes, gentle but thoughtful, as if he too was hearing the quiet melody of their past. Aaron found himself returning to the Daily Grind each day, not just for coffee, but to help. Matt had quietly mentioned that the café was closing for good, a decision that made Aaron's heart ache in a way he hadn't expected. This place was a piece of his past, and seeing it disappear felt like losing another part of himself. Over the next few days, they worked side by side. Aaron helped Matt pack up boxes of old mugs, take down faded posters, and wipe down counters for the last time. The tasks were simple, but they filled the silence between them, allowing a different kind of conversation to unfold. Remember that time, Mrs. Gable yelled at us for trying to roller skate through here. Matt chuckled, carefully wrapping a ceramic sugar bowl in newspaper. Aaron laughed, a genuine, easy sound. And you spilled a whole tray of muffins. She chased us all the way to the park. He paused, a wistful look in his eyes. Those were good days, weren't they? They were, Matt agreed, his voice softer now, tinged with a quiet sadness. He carefully placed a sugar bowl in a box labeled kitchen. We thought we'd live forever in this town, doing silly things. They talked about their childhood adventures, their voices hushed, filled with the warmth of shared memories. The time they tried to build a raft to sail down the creek, only for it to sink immediately. The summer they spent collecting bottle caps, convinced they were worth a fortune. Each story brought a smile, but also a hidden ache, a reminder of a time when their lives were simpler and their paths seemed forever intertwined. As they packed, Aaron noticed old photos tucked away in drawers, snapshots of a younger Matt and Aaron, grinning broadly, their arms slung around each other. Matt picked one up, a picture of them at the town fair, cotton candy smeared across their faces. He held it for a moment, a thoughtful look on his face, before gently placing it in a box. The unspoken feelings between them grew, a silent weight of all the years and all the words that had gone unsaid. They were closing the cafe, but it felt like they were also closing a chapter of their lives, and neither of them quite knew how to truly say goodbye. As the days of packing turned into evenings of quiet reflection, Aaron's mind kept drifting back to the abrupt way he'd left Oak Haven. He'd packed his bags almost overnight, a head full of big city dreams and a heart full of unspoken fears. He remembered the hurried phone call to his parents, the vague excuses, the quick goodbyes to a few friends. But with Matt, it had been different. There had been no real goodbye, just a rushed note left on the counter of the daily grind, promising to call, a promise he hadn't kept for a very long time. He felt a familiar twist in his gut, a mix of guilt and regret. He'd told himself it was easier that way, that a drawn-out farewell would have been harder. But seeing Matt now, seeing the gentle kindness in his eyes and the quiet way he looked at Aaron, made him realize how wrong he'd been. He hadn't just left town. He'd left Matt hanging, without a proper explanation, without a chance for either of them to truly process the sudden change. The memory of their last conversation, a casual chat about a movie, felt sharp and incomplete. He could almost hear his own voice, light and carefree, knowing all the while that he was planning his escape. It felt cowardly now. He should have been brave enough to tell Matt face to face, to explain his yearning for something more, even if he didn't fully understand it himself. This thought made his chest feel heavy, like he was carrying a secret weight. He'd always prided himself on being honest, but with Matt, he'd failed. Every shared laugh over an old memory, every quiet moment packing boxes, only made the unfinished business between them feel more real. He wanted to fix it, to somehow go back and say all the words he'd bottled up. But time didn't work that way. All he had was now, and the heavy feeling of all that was left unsaid. The last box was taped shut. The cafe, usually bustling with morning chatter, was now stripped bare, echoing with a hollow quiet. The familiar aroma of coffee had faded, replaced by the faint smell of dust and old wood. It was the very last night, and a sense of finality hung in the air, thick and heavy. Matt turned off the overhead lights, leaving only the soft glow of a single lamp near the counter. The shadows stretched long and thin, making the empty room feel even larger. "Fancy one last drink?" Matt asked, his voice soft, almost a whisper in the quiet space. "Not coffee tonight, though. Something a bit more special." Aaron nodded, his throat tight. He watched as Matt went to the small kitchen area, not to the big espresso machine they'd just covered, but to a small hot plate. Soon, the sweet, comforting scent of cocoa filled the air, a scent that brought back memories of cold winter nights and shared secrets. Matt poured 2 steaming mugs, the rich chocolate swirling with tiny white marshmallows, just the way they used to like it as kids. He brought the mugs to one of the few remaining tables, setting them down with a gentle clink. The old radio, usually playing upbeat morning tunes, was now tuned to a station playing soft, old-fashioned songs. A gentle piano melody drifted through the quiet cafe, a melody that seemed to hold all the years between them. They sat in silence, sipping their cocoa. The warmth of the mug spread through Aaron's hands, but the quiet stillness of the room felt louder than any noise. The air was thick with unspoken words, with the weight of the cafe's closing and with the long, silent history between them. Aaron could feel Matt's gaze on him, a steady, patient look that seemed to invite him to speak. But what to say? The music played on, a gentle, timeless tune, as if waiting for the right moment. The last notes of the piano faded from the radio, leaving a deep quiet. Aaron stirred his cocoa, watching the tiny marshmallows slowly melt. He could feel Matt's eyes on him, a warm, steady gaze that seemed to see right through his guarded heart. The silence stretched, not heavy or awkward, but full of unspoken understanding, like the calm before gentle rain. Then, Matt put his mug down on the table with a soft click. He leaned forward slightly, his kind eyes never leaving Aaron's face. His voice, when it came, was soft, almost a murmur, yet it cut through the quiet with surprising strength. "Aaron," Matt began, his tone gentle, "I've always wondered something." Aaron's breath hitched. He knew what was coming. He'd been dreading this moment, and secretly, deeply, hoping for it too. His heart thumped a nervous rhythm against his ribs. Matt took another quiet breath. "Why did you really leave, Aaron?" The words hung in the air, simple and true, yet they felt as big as the sky. There was no anger in Matt's voice, no bitterness, only a deep, honest question, brave in its quiet asking. It wasn't a demand, but an invitation, a gentle pull to open up. Aaron looked at Matt, truly looked at him, and saw the years of friendship, the quiet loyalty, the patient waiting. He saw the genuine care in Matt's eyes, and in that moment, the heavy weight he'd carried for so long began to tremble. The truth, raw and unvarnished, was suddenly right there, waiting to be spoken. Matt had asked the one question that changed everything, not with a shout, but with a whisper, and Aaron knew he couldn't hide from it any longer. He had to be brave too. Matt's question hung in the air, a gentle hand reaching across the years. Aaron felt a sudden rush of feelings, like a dam breaking inside him. Guilt, regret, relief, and a strange, hopeful fear all swirled together. His heart pounded, a frantic drumbeat against his ribs. This was it. This was the moment he had unknowingly returned for, the chance to unburden himself, to finally speak the words that had been a silent weight in his soul for a decade. He looked down at his cocoa, then back up at Matt. Matt's face was soft, patient, without a trace of judgment. That kindness, more than anything, gave Aaron the courage he needed. He thought of all the times he'd practiced this conversation in his head, all the different ways he'd imagined it playing out. None of them had felt quite right. But here, now, with the cafe empty and quiet, and Matt's gentle eyes on him, it felt like the only way to be. He took a deep, shaky breath, letting it out slowly. It felt like taking air into his lungs for the first time in years. The honesty was a fragile thing, a tiny seed trying to push through hard ground. But it was there. He knew he couldn't back away now. This wasn't just for Matt. It was for him too. It was time to stop hiding behind vague excuses and brave the truth, whatever it might be. He opened his mouth, and the first words felt rough, catching in his dry throat. But he pushed them out, knowing that once they started, they would flow, a river finally finding its way home. I felt stuck, Matt. Aaron began, his voice raspy at first, then gaining strength. I loved Oakhaven, I truly did. And I loved our friendship, this place. He gestured around the quiet cafe, a faint smile touching his lips. But I had these big, wild dreams, you know? Dreams of seeing more than just these streets, of doing something different. He explained how a fear of staying in one place, of never truly knowing what else was out there, had grown inside him like a secret plant. He talked about the pull of the city, the bright lights, the promise of new chances. I was scared, he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. Scared of missing out, scared of not being enough if I stayed. And I was scared to tell you because I knew it would hurt you, and that hurt me too. Aaron looked at Matt, whose gaze remained soft and steady. I know I left badly. I was a coward. I just picked up and ran, without a proper goodbye. I told myself it was for the best. That would be easier than a long, sad farewell. But it wasn't. It's been with me, Matt, all these years. That note, it was a terrible way to leave someone I cared about so much. He poured out his heart, talking about the hopes he had, the worries that kept him awake at night, and the feeling that Oakhaven, as much as he loved it, couldn't hold all his dreams. It was hard, like pulling out splinters one by one, but with each word, a lightness began to spread through his chest. The heavy weight he'd carried for so long, the burden of unspoken truths, started to lift, slowly, gently, like morning mist rising from the fields. He could feel it, a sense of rightness, of finally being truly seen and truly heard. Matt listened to Aaron's words without interruption, his eyes never leaving Aaron's face. He didn't flinch or look away, just absorbed every confession, every fear, every regret. When Aaron finally fell silent, a quiet sigh escaping him, Matt reached across the table and gently squeezed his arm. His touch was warm and comforting, a silent message of understanding. I always knew there was more to it, Aaron, Matt said, his voice still soft, but now carrying a hint of his own long-held feelings. That note, it hurt, yeah, a lot, but I knew you weren't the kind of person to just disappear without a reason. I just didn't know what that reason was. He paused, a faraway look in his eyes. You know, this cafe, it was always a bit of you, too. Every time I heard the bell jingle, part of me hoped it would be you walking through the door, ready to tell me all about your big adventures. A small, wistful smile played on his lips. I missed you, Aaron, more than I probably ever let on. Matt's honesty was a gentle echo of Aaron's own, a mirror reflecting the quiet pain they both carried. There were so many times I wanted to call, to just reach out. Matt continued, his voice barely above a whisper. But I didn't know if you wanted to be found. I didn't want to stop you from living your dreams, even if it meant living them far away from here. He looked back at Aaron, his gaze clear and kind. A part of me always hoped you'd come back, though, just to say hello, just to let me know you were okay, and to finally hear why. Matt's words were like a balm, soothing the raw places in Aaron's heart. It wasn't just forgiveness. It was a deep, unwavering understanding, a testament to a friendship that, despite the years and the silence, had never truly faded. Once the dam broke, the words flowed easily between them, like a river finding its path after a long drought. They talked about the raw edge of youth, the fears of not knowing what the future held, and the quiet ways they had both dealt with Aaron's sudden departure. Aaron spoke of the loneliness of new cities, the struggle to find his footing, and the quiet ache for a friendship he'd left behind. Matt, in turn, shared the quiet courage it took to keep the cafe going, the simple joy he found in his daily routines, and the constant echo of Aaron's absence. The air in the cafe, once thick with unspoken tension, began to feel lighter, clearer. It was as if the honest words they exchanged were sweeping away the dust of 10 years, allowing fresh air to circulate. The shadows still danced in the corners, but they no longer felt heavy. Instead, they seemed to embrace the shared moment, holding their confessions and understandings within the old walls. They talked about more than just the past, too. They spoke of the present, of how life had changed them, shaped them. Aaron shared glimpses of his life outside Oakhaven, the lessons he'd learned, the person he had become. Matt spoke of his decision to close the cafe, a bittersweet choice that marked a new chapter for him as well. There was no blame, no bitterness, just a deep, shared understanding, like two old trees finally intertwining their branches after growing apart for too long. The old radio continued to play its soft, timeless tunes, a gentle soundtrack to their long, overdue conversation. Every laugh, every quiet nod, every shared sigh of relief added to the feeling of mended ties. The old cafe, in its final hours, wasn't just a place where memories were made. It was a sanctuary where old wounds were finally acknowledged and gently healed. It felt like the space itself was breathing a sigh of relief, holding their new, honest words like precious treasures. The soft piano music on the radio had long since faded into static, replaced by the first chirping of birds outside. Through the cafe's front window, a pale light began to stretch across the sky, painting the edges of the horizon in soft pinks and oranges. Night had given way to dawn, and with it, a new kind of peace had settled over Aaron and Matt. They had talked until their voices were hoarse, until every secret and every quiet ache had been laid bare. Now, a comfortable silence filled the space, different from the heavy quiet before. It was a silence of understanding, of two hearts finally beating in sync again after a long separation. Aaron felt a deep, peaceful calm spread through him, like the warm glow of the rising sun. The knots in his stomach, the heavy weight in his chest, had all dissolved, leaving behind a lightness he hadn't felt in years. He looked at Matt, who was watching the sunrise too, a gentle smile on his face. Their past hadn't magically changed. The years of silence and the abrupt goodbye were still there. But their understanding of it, their shared truth, had changed everything. It was like looking at an old photograph, but now seeing all the colors and details that had been hidden before. "I'm glad you came back, Aaron," Matt said, his voice soft, almost a whisper. "Me too, Matt," Aaron replied, his voice thick with emotion. He felt a closeness to Matt that was deeper than their childhood bond, a connection forged in the quiet bravery of their honesty. It wasn't just friendship. It was a renewed trust, a promise of a future where unspoken words wouldn't build walls between them. As the sun climbed higher, casting golden light into the old café, they sat together, two men who had finally found their way back to each other, feeling closer than ever before. With the sun now fully awake and painting the café in warm, golden light, Matt stood up. "Well, I guess that's that," he said, his voice carrying a note of finality, but also a quiet contentment. He walked over to the counter, picking up the large, heavy key to the front door. Aaron joined him, a strange mix of sadness and hope swirling inside him. It was a bittersweet moment. Seeing the daily grind, a place that had been such a big part of their lives, close its doors for good felt like saying goodbye to a cherished memory. The empty shelves and stacked chairs were a quiet testament to an ending. Yet in the space between him and Matt, something new and strong had bloomed, something that felt much more important than any building. Matt held out the key. "Care to do the honors, for old time's sake?" he asked, a gentle smile on his face. Aaron took the key, its cold metal a sharp contrast to the warmth in his heart. He remembered all the times he'd seen Matt lock up, the familiar click of the bolt. Now it was his turn. He walked to the front door, the small bell above it now silent. He slid the key into the lock, turned it, and heard the satisfying thud of the door being secured. "That's it," he said softly, turning to face Matt. "That's it," Matt echoed. It was sad, yes, to see the end of an era, to say goodbye to a place filled with so many memories. But the sadness was soft, not sharp. It was overshadowed by a new, bright feeling. The honest words they had shared, the understanding they had found, felt like a promise. It was a hope that was stronger and more shining than any ending, a belief that some connections, once truly understood, could never really break. They had closed the door, but in doing so, they had opened another, much wider one between them. Stepping out of the now-locked café, Aaron and Matt stood side by side on the quiet sidewalk. The morning air was cool and fresh, carrying the faint scent of dew-kissed grass and a distant hint of wood smoke. The town of Oakhaven was just beginning to stir, a few lights flickering on in nearby houses. Above them, the sky was a canvas of soft blues and emerging gold, with the sun a bright, hopeful promise peeking over the horizon. Aaron took a deep breath, feeling the quiet bravery that had filled the café now settling within him. He looked at Matt, and Matt met his gaze, a peaceful smile gracing his lips. The old town, with its familiar clock tower and sleepy Main Street, looked exactly the same as it always had. But for Aaron and Matt, everything felt new. The air between them, once thick with unanswered questions and unspoken pain, was now clear and light, filled with the warmth of shared truths. "So," Matt said, breaking the comfortable silence, "what's next for you, Aaron?" Aaron thought for a moment, then grinned. "I don't know yet, but I'm not running this time." He looked at Matt, his eyes shining with a new kind of freedom. "And I'm definitely not leaving without a proper goodbye." Matt chuckled, a sound full of genuine warmth. "Good, because I'm not letting you." They stood there for a long time, watching the sun rise higher, casting long shadows behind them. The ending of the daily grind was indeed sad, a closing chapter. But it wasn't an ending for them. It felt like a fresh start, a new beginning built on honest words and a friendship that had weathered the years and emerged stronger. The quiet bravery of their talk had opened a path, not just to understanding, but to a renewed future, bright with the promise of more shared sunrises and a bond that would never again be left unsaid. Oakhaven might be the same, but for Aaron and Matt, the world had changed, full of possibilities.